This quiz had some challenges, yep. Oh, I get to introduce you all to my favorite student. Rob, can you read that out?
And Sirki.
Ann Sirki. She gets everything right. It's great. Some of you will figure out the joke, some of you won't, whatever. Explain it to Quinn. All vectors have both magnitude and direction. Answer key. Okay, I got it. My other favorite student is Ima. We have Ima Chekhov. Because that's what I'm checking off an assignment. Okay, anyways. I wrote Chekhov. Anyways, let's keep going. Number one. I'm going to DOLP, I'm going to defect, unless they give me a picture, then I won't DOLP, I'll just label the picture that they gave me. But they didn't give me a picture. Keywords, if you did not underline the word horizontally and you get this wrong, then you'll go back and you underline the word horizontally. I'm going to draw a little picture. It looks like we're launching from a cliff, and what's key is we're launching from a cliff horizontally. How fast? Looks like 80 meters per second. Did they give me the range or did they give me the height? Oh, they gave me the height, which means it's going to be a little more work, and I know I'm going to spend most of my time finding time. The height is 25 meters. Is this a projectile? It is? Well, then I'm going to start out doing a T-table. Horizontal, vertical. AX equals 0. AY equals negative 9.8. The rest depends on the question, but I know for horizontally, Vx is that 80, and the key is, if you launch horizontally, what's your initial vertical velocity? 0, which anytime I have zeros, I smile, because that means in my equation, stuff will cancel, and it just got a lot easier. I have 2 things in each column, not enough. Oh, I bet you they gave me a displacement. Vertical or horizontal? Looking at the picture, height, they gave me a vertical, so I'm going to write dy equals, and what mistake did I just make? Negative. I'm looking for an equation. Now, I've told you guys write your vertical stuff here. Just so I can show part marks easier, I'm going to go over here so I have more room to write. I'm looking for an equation that has, I'm going to solve for time vertically here. So I'm looking for an equation that has A, V, I, D, and T in it. It's going to be D equals VIT plus a half AT squared. That's going to cancel. I'm going to get the T by itself. How? Times by 2, divide by A square root. T is going to be 2 times D over A square root. It's going to be 2 times negative 25 over negative 9.8. The total time of flight to hit the ground is going to be 2 times negative 25 divided by negative 9.8 square root. 2.26, well, first of all, I'll carry some extra sig figs. I'm going to write 2.2588. And then for my answer, now if you didn't write your answer in the box, if you just left it down here and put a box around it, you're smart. Really, Mr. Dueck? I marked provincial exams for a couple of years, and the first thing when I marked the old provincial exams, when I was marking the math exam, all the veteran markers said to me, what, you tell your kids to put their answers on the box? You're dumb. I said, why? Well, first of all, we won't take marks off. If you just draw a box around your answer, we'll clue in. But they said to me, watch how many kids have the right answer and copy it down wrong into the box. And that's the one we have to mark, even though they got it right. I bet you it was 1 in 20 papers kids couldn't copy the answer. We called it a transcription error. And in fact, sometimes we would actually just pretend not to see it, which we weren't supposed to do. We were supposed to mark that answer in the box. But if we saw they had a lovely proof and had done it all right and had like missed a 1 or moved the decimal in the wrong place, we just didn't see it. So I learned. So somebody asked me, Mr. Dueck, what if I didn't put my answer in the box? Good. As long as you clearly know where your answer is, 2.26 seconds, so you can do that. If you did that, that gets you 2 out of 2. If you didn't get this right, how would I give out part marks? I would give you a half mark if I saw that. And I would give you a half mark if I saw that. I would give you a half mark if I saw, sorry, nope. I would also give you a half mark if I saw that. You can get 1.5 out of 2 and still have done this. Those, to me, are the key ideas in this question. B says, how far does the cannon travel horizontally? Why, I think that's asking me to find a dx, which is going to be vxt plus, oh. Why don't I bother writing plus a half at squared? The range is going to be 80 times 2.2588. I'm going to use my answer button. Does that have an answer memory feature at all? Do you, when the battery gets low, is there like a crank that you can turn just to... 181? If I go to 3 sig figs, and I said final answer is 2 or 3 sig figs. If you said 180.7, just put a frowny face, give yourself full marks. But our habit's going to be final answer, 2 or 3, really 3 sig figs. So I'm going to say the range equals 181 meters. If you got that right, you get 2 out of 2. Now, if you got the wrong time value, but you took that time value and you multiplied it by 80 correctly, you can give yourself 2 out of 2 for part 2. Never leave a part B blank. If you can't find parts of Tyson, maybe you forgot how to find the time. Okay? On a test, write a note to me, Mr. Dueck, I can't remember how to find T. I'm going to assume T is 6 seconds. Make up a reasonable value. And show me that you can do part B. I'll give you full marks for part B. I'll get my calculator out. I'll crunch your numbers. And I'll go, oh, yeah, he did that right. I will give you full marks for that. Okay? Otherwise, if you got this wrong, I would probably say I would give you 1 mark if I saw that, half mark for plugging things in, and then a half mark for the answer. If you ever look at my computer, all my answer keys have these little half mark little circle, like where I show how I give up my part marks. So about 5 years ago, I was teaching Math 12, and so was Mr. Kamosi. We were both teaching trig, and we had used the same test, and I had made up the answer key. And a kid stole the answer key from Mr. Kamosi's desk and cheated. And it was pretty obvious that he had cheated because he got perfect on the multiple choice, showing no work. But then on the written section, he had literally memorized what I had written. So on his written section were these little 0.5s and arrows pointing to where the part marks were, because he had no idea what the heck any of it meant. So he was literally just barfing this back onto the page. He had no idea. So he was doing my marking scheme, thinking that was the answer, and that's how he was going to cheat. Also, Mr. Kamosi's test on the written section, 2 of the pages had gotten flipped. So this kid had the answers to this page perfectly on this page and the answers to this page perfectly. So thankfully he sucked at cheating and we busted him. By the way, don't cheat, because if you think you can get away with it, what happens if you cheat next year in university? You get expelled and you don't get a refund. So don't. Number 2. I still remember that one. Mr. Kamosi came to me with the paper. I think this guy cheated. And I just, yeah. He was like, what are those? Oh, that's my marking scheme. Oh, okay. I'm an adult. .28 meters per second. 58 degrees. Again, if you blank out, it's opposite hypotenuse, which trig function is Vy. It is sine, if you forget, though. And it's adjacent over hypotenuse, which trig function is Vx. Of course it is. Okay. I think it's going to be Vx ends up being 28 cos 58. And Vy initial ends up being 28 sine 58. I'm going to write down 14.838 here. Did I read that right? 14.838? Yeah, 838. Now here, I'll go to 3 sig figs. 14.8. If you didn't, I won't take marks off, but I will take marks off if you forgot the units. Half mark off if you didn't put, because that's a final answer. Units on every final answer. That's a blank. Yeah. I'm good with that. And it's going to be, I can just backspace now, all year. 23.745, 23.745, which is going to be 23.7 meters per second. 2 marks. I'm asking you to find 2 things. Any suggestions on how I might mark this one? 1 mark for each one? No? I'm trying to introduce you to how I mark stuff. This time, I don't think I give you any part marks, but I would take a half mark off for the units. Okay? By the way, really what I would do if I gave you this question is I would just ask how long is the projectile in the air or something like that, and make it most of my, in fact, all of my written questions on your test are worth 7 marks. And you'll notice in the big review, they're almost all worth 7 marks. That lets me give out lots and lots and lots of part marks. It works out really well. What is the maximum height? I'm going to do B here, and I'm going to do C here. And interestingly, what is B asking me to find? And what is C asking me to find? You know what? I think both of these are vertical, although normally I would do a T-table, and no problem if you did. I'm willing to bet you didn't use any of the horizontal stuff, did you? So I'm just going to go like this. AY equals negative 9.8. VY initial equals 23.745. Maximum height is dy. Not enough. I need something else. At the top for a split second. I'm looking for an equation that has A, V initial, D, and V. Oh, there is. It's the squared, what VF squared equals VI squared plus 2. Get the D by itself. D equals VF squared minus VI squared all over 2A. D equals 0 squared minus 23.745 squared all over 2 negative 9.8. That's, by the way, I heard somebody say, I forgot the squareds. If there's one thing that drives me crazy, it's somehow kids have made up an equation. They say this, which is garbage. That's not an equation. It's not on your sheet, nothing. But I see that. I don't know where that comes from. That one that's always puzzled me. But I guarantee, because I have 60 kids in Physics 12 this year, when I mark your tests, I'm going to see that pop up at least once. I don't know how the 2 vanishes, first of all. And then, Jose, you're going to hear me go ballistic all year long about squareds. That is a common mistake. The squareds I can live with because that's a mistake. It's the nonsense equation from nowhere. That's the one where I go, what? Huh? Eh? 0 squared minus, I can go answer button squared, divided by bracket 2 times negative 9.8. I got to put brackets around the bottom because there's 2 numbers down there. Do you guys get 28.8? Yes? So you didn't write squareds, but you did them on your calculator? Yeah. Good thing I look at the final answer first. 28.8 meters. Again, half mark off if you have no units. Now, if you got that right, 2 out of 2. Otherwise, was it 2 marks, Mr. Dueck? Yeah. Otherwise, how would I give up part marks? I would probably give 1 whole mark if I saw that equation. To me, 'cause that's the key. You've recognized the method. Half mark for sticking in the numbers. Which means if you did make a calculator mistake, you can still get 1.5 out of 2 if you show me some work. And this is why I've tried to distinguish between Isaac, take in your head and homework, absolutely show work on tests. And I figure you guys are smart enough to know the difference. I don't want to make you show work all the time and not free you up to get good. C. AY, still negative 9.8. VY initial is still 23.745. That's not enough. Oh! What's VY final? What do I hit the ground at? Not 0. That's after I hit the ground. Now, if you let Vy final be 0, that would give you the time to top. And if you doubled it, that works because we're starting and ending on the ground. That's fine. My way gets me there in one step. Smarter than you, didn't less work. T equals Vf minus Vi over A. You know what? Since I'm using this number twice, I'm actually going to go back in my calculator and retype 28 sine 58. And just because I can, I'm going to store that as an answer. Because then I'm going to go bracket negative answer button, there's negative Vi, minus answer button divided by negative 9.8. And that way I don't have any rounding errors. You don't have to, but I'll teach you. If you got a good calculator, why not use it? You guys get 4.8. Technically 8.5. I'll take 8.4 because depending if you round it off, you might have 4.84. Is that right? Yep. Otherwise, same as before, I would give you 1 mark for that. I would probably give you a half mark if you did that. Or I would give you, first of all, you got the right answer, you get 2 out of 2. If you had it wrong, I would have given you a half mark credit for saying V final is 0 as long as I saw that you had doubled the time somewhere. If you had not, then I wouldn't give you credit because I'd be saying, wait a minute, you're telling me it hits the ground stopped? No, after it hits the ground, it stopped. But I'm telling you, when it hits the ground, it's moving. So, wow, you're intense today, Mr. Dueck. It's because I did a lot of caffeine this morning because I had such a lousy sleep. Oh yeah, turn the page. I want to add these 2 vectors together. Any suggestions on how I might want to add them together, oh pray tell? Tip to tail, you don't say. You know what? There's a compass. I'm going to be clever, and I'm going to put in a compass rose somewhere. And it looks like we have 5 newtons east plus 12 south. You guys see how I gave you a nice triangle that worked out evenly? I gave you the 5, 12, 13 triangle. This one did work out evenly, right? There's your resultant. Think it when you do the Pythagoras, you end up with 13 newtons, and that would get you 1 mark. At, and here's my angle theta, opposite, adjacent. Dueck, is it 10 again? Opposite over adjacent. I think this is in the 50-degree range or something like that, if I recall. Oh, no, way off. 67.4. If you just said 67, 2 sig figs, that's fine. 67.4 degrees. What of what? North of south, east of west, what of what? South of east. By the way, I'm going to be fussy. Make sure you say south of east. If you say that, southeast, it's assumed you mean 45 degrees. That's, southeast is 45 degrees. I won't take marks off this time, but I will on a test. Oh, half mark for the angle. Half mark for the what of what. It's usually how I do these ones. I gave you 1 mark for the correctly labeled diagram, so this whole question is out of 3. Four was tied for the toughest question. I read number 4 and I went, oh. Why did I cringe right away? Because I saw degrees in the question, and if there's degrees in the question, it ain't going to be no right-angled triangle. If it's north and south and east and west, they're either going to be in a nice straight line, and I'll let one be negative, or they're going to be perpendicular, and that's Sokoto and Pythagoras. If you see an angle, 30 degrees, oh, Dueck! So here's the concept that we're getting at. We are saying the velocity of the plane's engines, whichever way the motors are pushing it, plus the velocity of the crosswind, that's what results in resultant ground velocity. And I've scrolled down, so I'm going to stick another compass rose on here. It looks like I have engine velocity, 220, due east. I have a crosswind blowing 80 meters per second, 30 degrees north of east. North of what? North of what? North of what? I draw the east first. what of east? That's how I know to draw that. A line 80 would be about that long compared to my other one, and the angle is 30 degrees. Now, this is where we're going to see lots of mistakes, I suspect. So I'll tell you how the part marks go at the very end. First of all, I am going to add them together. Any thoughts on how I would draw it? Now, if I do that, I get this. 220, 80. Seems to me the resultant is that. I will give you a half mark for that. To get a full mark for the diagram, you have to have that angle. Now, here's the problem. They didn't give me that angle. They told me that this angle here was 30 degrees. How big is the one next to it then?
Why do we have to have this?
Just how big? I'll come back to that. Sorry? 150 degrees. Why? Because this forms a complete straight line. So one of the most common mistakes that I see is kids put 30. No, look how big it is. That's not a 30 degree. 30 degrees is about like that. There needs to be 150, either in your diagram or if you used as theta 150, I'll give you credit. What I am saying is if you put a 30 there, I won't give you 1 out of 1 for your vector diagram. That's what I'm saying.
I did it a little bit different.
I'll come look at yours then, but not right now. Lawyer with me after. SOHCAHTOA? No. Is there a pair? Nope, it ain't the sine law, so what is it? It's going to be v squared equals 220 squared plus 80 squared minus 220, 80 cos 150. Thankfully, I have a good calculator. I can just type this all in one fell swoop. Am I wrong? No, I'm right. 220 times 80 cosine 150. Oh, that's way off. 85,000, that's way... Oh, what do I have to remember to do with the cosine law? Square root. Three sig figs, 292. So where it says answer, I got the magnitude, 292 meters per second. That would get you 1 mark. Let's keep going. Now I need an at. Which at? I think my angle is going to be where the vector is coming from, which is that corner there, which is going to be what of what? North of south, east of west, what of what? So I'm going to leave a space. It is going to be north of east. That will also get you a half mark. Now I need theta. Sine law. Sine of the mystery angle divided by what's across from it, 80, equals sine of the angle that I know divided by what's across from it, which on my triangle is VG, but I just figured out that VG is 292.03, 292.03, although I'm just going to use my answer button. I want to get the sine theta by itself. I need to move the 80 over. How would I move the 80 over? So it's going to be 80 times the sine of 150 divided by answer button. What? Oh, no, that's the sine of theta. How do I reverse this and get theta? .9, 7.87. I'll go 7.9 degrees. That also gets you. Now, really, this question should be worth 4 or 5 marks because of its level of difficulty, but I didn't want to do that because it's tough. It's tough. Very tough. So 3 marks. If you got the right answer, if you got exactly what I got, then I would give you full marks for the whole question if you did it a different method, but if you want to show it to me later, you can. Okay?
I didn't draw the
Okay, show me later. Once we mark the quiz, what you're going to hear me then say is, anybody come lawyer with me, now is the time. We always do it afterwards, because otherwise I can spend the whole time talking about one question. Number 5. Ugh. Cliff at an angle. Ugh. Please tell me he left me lots. Oh, he left me lots of room. Okay. Is it a projectile? Well, then I'm going to do this. Is there an angle? I'm looking for a word that begins with letter C and rhymes with opponents. Oh, of course I do. Vx is going to be 20 cos 30, and Vy, initial, is going to be 20 sine 30. I know this just ends up being 10. 20 cos 30. Cos 30 is 0.866. So it's going to be 2 times 0.866, which is going to be 16. Oh, this is going to be 17.32? I think I've used this number before. This is jogging my memory. 17.321. I'll carry an extra sig fig. 17.321. Oh. Dueck, you jerk. Because understand, if I had given you this displacement here, you can find time by just using Vxt. There's no half at squared. It's not a quadratic. If I give you the range, it's easy to find the time. But if I don't, ugh. Dueck. Who would like me to solve for t using the quadratic equation? Who would like me to solve for t using Vf squared equals Vi to find V final? Okay? I'll try and do both. I think I have time today. No pun intended. Okay? So if you use the quadratic equation, you would go like this. You would go negative 36 equals 10t minus 4.9t squared. You okay with where the negative 4.9 came from? I took half of the 9.8. I prefer to plus the 4.9 squared and the 10t, well, minus the 10t over, because I hate the squared term to be negative. So I'm going to write this as 4.9t squared minus 10t minus 36 equals 0. I would say A, B, C. T equals. Now, if you have a quadratic solver, all you need to do now is write down the quadratic formula. And I'd give you full marks when you wrote down the roots afterwards. If you don't have a quadratic solver, negative b plus or minus the square root of negative 10 squared. You know what? I can do that in my head. What is negative 10 squared? You know, I'll just do that. Minus 4 times a times c all over 9.8, which is 2a. I usually do what's inside the square root first. 100 minus 4 times a times c. And I would say, okay, t is going to be 10 plus or minus the square root. This one isn't too bad. 805.6 all over. Where this gets really yucky is if VI is a long, triggy decimal. Okay, use your calculator. It's going to be bracket 10 plus the square root of 805.6, close bracket, divided by 9.8. You know what? I know the other root is negative. It's a negative time. Would I reject it anyhow? Then I'm not going to bother finding it. T equals 3.9166. I'm not done, but I found time. Or, here's what I can't do. So Isaac, like you said you used found V fine. Here's what you cannot do. What I see is kids do this. Problem is, you don't know Vy final. They'll put a 0 there because they keep thinking, oh, the final velocity is 0. No, that's after it hits the ground, Captain Obvious. Final velocity is as it hits the ground. So I have to find that first. I'm going to go Vf squared equals Vi squared plus 2AD. But actually, I'm going to put the square root there and get rid of the squared. Vy final is going to be the square root of 10 squared plus 2 negative 9.8 negative 36. By the way, Isaac, do you notice 10 squared? Minus minus is a plus, minus minus is a plus. Instead of 2 times 9.8, I have 4 times 4.9, which is the same as 2 times. We're actually doing the quadratic formula in chunks using this method. Hashtag nerd trivia. 10 squared plus 2 times negative 9.8 times negative 36 square root. Vy final is 28.3831. Which is wrong. What's the one thing, if I'm using this method, Jordan, what's the one thing I have to remember here? I have to introduce the negative because I know it's going down. Now I can go Vy final minus Vy initial over A. I can go negative 28.3831 minus 10 all over negative 9.8. And if I'm lucky, negative answer button minus 10 all over negative 9.8. Turns out I get exactly the same answer. 3.9166422 blah, 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 blah. And I'll write down T equals 3.9166. Regardless, what are we going to spend most of our time finding? Time. Now, let's actually finish the question. They wanted the dx. For both of these now, we can go dx equals vxt, dx equals 17.32 blah, 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 times 3.9166 blah, blah, blah. What was it? It was 17.321. 17.321 times answer button. The range is 67.8. If you got that, 4 out of 4. This one I made worth 4 marks. It was a tough question. If not, I would definitely give you 1 mark if you found time on either side. Let's see. I would give you a half mark for that. I would give you a half mark for that, no matter which approach you used. I'd probably give you a half mark for that. That gives you 1.5. If you went with the quadratic formula, I'd give you a half mark for that. That's 2. I'd give you 1 mark for that. Nope, never mind. I'd give you a half mark for that. And then, yeah, I'd give you a half mark for the answer. That gets you up to 4. On this side, I got a half. I'd give you 1. That's 1.5. No, I got 1.5. Same thing, Dueck. Give them a half mark. Good gosh, my marking schemes get too complicated when I allow more than one method, but that's okay. 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3.5, 4. Something like that. But if you got the right answer, full marks. Like 67.9? What did you use for T? So you round the, I'd give you, because you're accurate to 2 sig figs, which is all I really ask, but start, if you got a good calculator, start developing the habit of being able to keep extra sig figs along and use your answer button and things like that. Yep. I don't know about you, but I'm hitting the wall. Oh. With what velocity, magnitude, and direction does the projectile hit the wall? Did I say projectile? T-table. Do I see an angle? Components. 7 marks. I leave you lots of room? Okay, good. Sure, I can fit it all here. Horizontal, vertical, AX equals 0. AY is negative 9.8. VX is going to be, cos. 34 cos 38. Vy initial is going to be 34 sine 38. 34 cos 38 is 26.792. 34 sine 38 20.932. I need something else. Oh, they gave me this, which is definitely horizontal. dx equals 94. Ah, nice. I can find time. Time is going to be dx over vx, isn't it? No half at squared. It's going to be 26.792 divided by 94. The time of flight,
Other way around.
that's what I meant to write. Good gosh, schrecklich, Mr. Dueck. Ach, Junge, was ist los mit dir? 94 divided by 26. Mr. Dueck, how many times did your mom say that to you when you were a child? I don't know. Enough, apparently. So, you know what? I'm going to even be really clever and bring back that number so I can go 94 divided by answer button. And I get 3.5085. I'll carry some extra sig figs because I'm not done. 3.5085 seconds. Why does that help? Well, this question, Quinn, is asking me to find the final velocity. Now, the final velocity is going to be looking like that. That's the impact velocity, assuming the picture is right. And I know that that's made up of that and that. I know that that's made up of a Vx of 26.792 and a Vy final of Vy final is going to be Vy initial plus AT. It's going to be, what was Vy initial, Mr. Dueck? 20.932 plus negative 9.8 times 3.5085. It's going to be 20.9325. I'll even add that from there since I have it sitting there. Plus negative 9.8 times, answer button. It's on its way down. How do I know? Negative. So the picture is right. Negative 13.45. 13.45. You mean after all this, it's Math 8? I'll love it. V impact, which is this right here, is going to be that number squared plus 26.792 squared, square root. 20, you know what? I think it's going to be 30.0, I think, if I carry enough sig figs, because if I round to there, is that 9 going to stay a 9 or become a 0? It's going to become a 0, which is going to bump that one up by 1. It's going to bump that one up by 1. So 30.0 meters per second at tan theta equals opposite over adjacent no, that's not right. Shift tan equals opposite over adjacent. Whew. Do you get 26.7 degrees? Really 27 degrees if you went to 2, yeah? I'll go 27 degrees. What of what? North of south, east of west, what of what? Now, if you got that, I would give you full marks no matter what work you showed or didn't show. Okay, so I always check the answer. Really, I check the answer, and if there's some work, I give you full marks. If you only have an answer, I'm pretty sure you cheated. So don't just only write an answer down and say, I did all in my head. I had a kid a couple of years ago keep saying that, and then when I started making him show work, go figure, he started getting all the answers wrong. He's cheating. So don't do that. Otherwise, I would go something like this. Well, for 7 marks, 1 mark for that, 1 mark for that. I would definitely give you 1 mark for finding time. That's up to 3. I would give you 1 mark for Vx. That's 4. 1 mark for Vy. That's 5. I would give you 1 mark for Vy final. That's 6. And I'd probably give you like 1 mark for drawing the vector triangle. There's 7 marks. What you need to do now is on the top of your quiz somewhere very clearly put your score out of 28, and now is also the time to come lawyer with me if you have any questions.